In the not-so-distant future, Earth had become a place where corporations ruled everything. Governments were weak, their power overshadowed by massive companies that controlled every aspect of life. These corporations didn't just sell products, they built cities, ran armies, and even decided who lived or died. Among these powerful entities was Omicron Dynamics, a tech giant known for its cutting-edge innovations and ruthless business practices. Omicron wasn't just about making money, it was about domination. And when someone crossed them, there were consequences. That's where ShortStories came in. They weren't ordinary soldiers. ShortStories was an elite team of mercenaries, handpicked for their skills and loyalty, or at least the appearance of it. Their leader was Ryan Dawson, a man with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. He had seen more battles than he cared to count, but this mission felt different from the start. This time, they weren't fighting rebels or rogue AI systems. This time, their target was human, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. The briefing took place in a sleek high-tech room deep within Omicron Dynamics headquarters. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing maps, data streams, and surveillance footage. At the center of the room stood Ryan, flanked by his team. Chris Hale, the tactical expert who could think 3 steps ahead of any enemy. Mia Torres, a sniper whose aim was unmatched. Jake Owens, the demolition specialist who could blow up anything with precision. And Laura Bennett, the quiet yet brilliant communications officer who kept the team connected no matter what. A tall, suited executive walked into the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. His name was Mr. Grayson, one of Omicron's top executives. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice smooth but cold. "As you may already know, we have a problem. A very serious problem." He gestured to the hologram hovering above the table. It showed a man in his early 30s with short dark hair and a determined expression. "This is Alex Carter, formerly one of our best operatives, now a traitor. 3 days ago, he infiltrated our secure servers and stole classified data that, if leaked, could destabilize global markets and expose sensitive operations. We need him stopped before he can do further damage." Ryan studied the image carefully. There was something unsettling about Alex's face. It wasn't the look of a criminal or a madman. Instead, he seemed calm, almost resigned, as if he knew exactly what he was doing and why. "Why us?" Ryan asked, breaking the silence. "You've got entire divisions of private security. Why call in mercenaries?" Grayson smirked slightly. "Because this isn't a typical retrieval operation. Alex is smart. Too smart. He's evaded every attempt to capture him so far, disappearing into Sector 7, a lawless zone outside our jurisdiction. That's your territory, isn't it? You thrive in chaos. Besides," he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, "we don't want this traced back to us. If things go wrong, we'll deny any involvement. Understood?" Ryan nodded, though the implication made his stomach churn. They were being sent into the lion's den without a safety net. Still, they didn't have much choice. Turning down Omicron Dynamics meant signing your own death warrant. "Understood," Ryan said firmly. "What's the plan?" Grayson activated another hologram, this one displaying a sprawling map of Sector 7. It was a wasteland of crumbling buildings, twisted metal, and overgrown vegetation. Once a thriving industrial district, it had been abandoned decades ago after a series of catastrophic events turned it into a no-man's land. Now, it was home to outlaws, scavengers, and worse. "Our intel suggests Alex is holed up somewhere." "In the southern quadrant," Grayson explained. "Your objective is simple. Find him, retrieve the stolen data, and eliminate him if necessary. Do whatever it takes." Chris leaned forward, studying the map intently. "Sector 7 is a maze," he muttered. "Even with drones, it'll take days to comb through the entire area. Are we looking for anything specific? Patterns? Weak points?" Grayson handed over a small device. "This tracker will help. It's synced to Alex's biometrics. As long as he's alive, it'll lead you straight to him. But be warned, he's not alone. Word on the street is that he's gathered some allies. Mercenaries, hackers, maybe even locals sympathetic to his cause. Don't underestimate him. Mia frowned, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. And what happens if we succeed? What's in it for us besides staying alive? Grayson smiled thinly. Omicron always rewards those who deliver results. Let's just say your accounts will reflect our gratitude. Now get moving, time is not on our side. Later that evening, the team gathered in their makeshift base, a dimly lit warehouse filled with weapons, gear, and monitors displaying real-time feeds of Sector 7. Ryan paced back and forth, his mind racing. Something about this mission didn't sit right with him. Sure, they'd taken on tough jobs before, but this felt bigger, like they were pawns in a game they didn't fully understand. All right, listen up, Ryan said, addressing his team. Sector 7 isn't just dangerous because of the people living there, it's unpredictable. Systems fail, comms drop, and paranoia runs rampant. We stick together. No lone wolf moves. Got it? Everyone nodded, though Jake looked uneasy. Boss, I've heard stories about that place, weird stuff. People going missing. Strange noises at night. You really think Alex picked it randomly? I don't care what he picked, Ryan replied sharply. Our job is to bring him down. Focus on that. Laura adjusted her headset, her brow furrowed. I'm picking up some interference already. Could be atmospheric, but it might also mean counter-surveillance. Someone doesn't want us snooping around. Probably Alex, Chris said grimly. He's playing dirty, fine by me. Let's show him how it's done. As they prepared to leave, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But there was no turning back now. Omicron Dynamics had given them their orders, and failure wasn't an option. Little did they know, this mission would change their lives forever, or end them entirely. The hum of their armored vehicle filled the air as they approached Sector 7. The closer they got, the darker the sky became, heavy clouds blotting out the stars. Shadows loomed ahead, broken only by the occasional flicker of distant fires. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw clenched. Whatever awaited them in Sector 7, it was clear they wouldn't be coming back the same. The armored vehicle rumbled to a halt at the edge of Sector 7, its tires crunching against the cracked asphalt. The team stepped out cautiously, their boots kicking up small clouds of dust as they surveyed the desolate landscape. Broken buildings loomed like skeletal remains, their windows shattered and walls crumbling. The air smelled of rust and decay, a constant reminder of the area's abandonment. It was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of electricity crackling from exposed wires dangling from nearby poles. Ryan adjusted his rifle strap and glanced at the tracker Grayson had given them. A blinking red dot indicated Alex's location, or at least, where his biometrics were being detected. He's about 2 kilometers south, Ryan said, pointing toward a cluster of dilapidated warehouses. Let's move. Chris took the lead, scanning their surroundings with practiced precision. His tactical expertise made him invaluable in situations like this, but even he couldn't shake the unease creeping into his mind. Something about this place felt wrong. The silence was too heavy, the shadows too deep. Every step they took seemed to echo unnaturally, as if the ground itself was alive and watching. Mia stayed close behind, her sniper rifle slung over her shoulder. Her sharp eyes darted between rooftops and alleyways, searching for any sign of movement. Jake followed next, clutching a satchel filled with explosives. He muttered under his breath, occasionally glancing at the sky. Laura brought up the rear, her headset constantly scanning for signals. Still getting interference, she whispered. It's not just atmospheric. Someone, or something, is jamming us. They moved through the ruins carefully, sticking to cover whenever possible. As they neared the warehouses, Chris held up a fist, signaling the group to stop. Ahead of them, the road narrowed into a tight corridor flanked by towering structures. It was the perfect spot for an ambush. We need to clear this before we proceed, Chris said quietly. Laura, can you check for heat signatures? Laura nodded and pulled out a handheld scanner. She frowned as static filled the screen. Nothing. Either there's no one here or something's blocking the signal. Great, Jake grumbled. Just what we needed. Ryan stepped forward, his voice firm. Stay sharp. If Alex is here, he knows we're coming. Let's push through. As they entered the narrow passage, the oppressive atmosphere grew heavier. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the faint whispers Laura had mentioned earlier returned, louder this time. At first, it sounded like distant voices carried by the wind, but soon the words became clearer, though none of them could understand what was being said. Mia froze, her hand tightening on her rifle. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Hear what?" Ryan replied, though his expression betrayed his growing concern. "It's nothing," Mia said, shaking her head, but her eyes darted nervously toward the shadows. They pressed on, determined to reach the warehouse marked by the tracker. When they finally arrived, the building stood eerily silent, its metal doors partially ajar. Faint scorch marks marred the exterior, evidence of past conflicts. Ryan motioned for the team to spread out, covering all angles. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the only light filtering in through cracks in the roof. Piles of debris littered the floor, and the air was thick with the smell of oil and burnt plastic. In the center of the room sat a makeshift workstation, a cluttered desk surrounded by monitors and cables. Papers and data drives were scattered across the surface, some still glowing faintly. It looked like someone had been working here recently but left in a hurry. "Looks like we found his hideout," Chris said, examining the setup. "But where is he?" Before anyone could answer, a soft sound echoed through the room, a slow, deliberate clap. The team spun around, weapons raised, to see Alex Carter stepping out from behind a stack of crates. He looked exactly like his picture, unassuming yet confident, with an air of calm defiance. His hands were raised in surrender, but his expression suggested he wasn't afraid. "Well done," Alex said, his tone almost mocking. "I figured Omicron would send someone eventually. Didn't expect them to go all out with their best dogs, though." "Save the speeches," Ryan snapped, leveling his rifle at Alex. "Hand over the data, and maybe we'll let you live." Alex chuckled softly, lowering his hands. "You really think it's that simple? You don't know who you're dealing with or what you've walked into. What are you talking about?" Mia demanded, her finger hovering over the trigger. Instead of answering, Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. Before anyone could react, he pressed a button, and a blinding flash of light erupted from the gadget. The team shielded their eyes instinctively, but the brightness overwhelmed them, leaving spots dancing across their vision. When the light faded, Alex was gone. For a moment, no one spoke. The room felt emptier, colder. Ryan lowered his weapon and scanned the area, his heart pounding. "Spread out," he barked. "Find him." The team split up, searching every corner of the warehouse. But no matter how hard they looked, there was no trace of Alex. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, strange things began happening. Equipment malfunctioned sporadically. Radios crackled with unintelligible noise, and the tracker displayed erratic readings. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally, moving when they shouldn't have. Even the temperature fluctuated wildly, alternating between icy cold and stifling heat. Laura leaned against a wall, trying to steady herself. Her headset buzzed incessantly, filling her ears with distorted voices. She ripped it off in frustration, only to realize the whispers hadn't stopped. They were coming from somewhere else, somewhere inside her own mind. "Something's wrong," she murmured, clutching her head. "This isn't normal." Chris appeared beside her, his usual composure replaced by unease. "Tell me about it. My GPS says we're miles away from where we started. That's impossible." Jake joined them, looking pale. "Guys, I think we need to leave. Right now." Ryan approached, his face grim. "We're not leaving until we find Alex. Whatever's going on, it's part of his plan. We stick together and stay focused." But staying focused was becoming harder by the minute. The longer they remained in the warehouse, the more disoriented they felt. Time seemed to stretch and warp, minutes passing like hours. Familiar landmarks disappeared, replaced by unfamiliar ones. Doors led to places they'd already searched, and hallways twisted in impossible directions. Finally, Chris snapped. "This isn't right. This isn't human. We're walking in circles. And none of our gear works anymore. How do we fight something we can't even see? Ryan grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing eye contact. We don't panic, not yet. We figure this out together. Even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. For the first time in his career, Ryan didn't feel in control. This mission wasn't just dangerous, it was beginning to feel supernatural. And deep down, he wondered if they'd ever make it out alive. As night fell outside, the warehouse grew darker and colder. The whispers grew louder, overlapping voices speaking in languages none of them recognized. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into shapes that resembled humanoid figures. Each member of Shadow Strike struggled to maintain their composure, but fear was spreading like wildfire, and somewhere hidden in the chaos, Alex watched silently, waiting to see how far they would go before breaking completely. The team huddled together in the center of the warehouse, their weapons drawn but useless against whatever was happening around them. The air felt heavier now, pressing down on their chests like an invisible weight. Shadows moved where there should have been none, flickering across the walls and floor as if alive. None of them spoke, but their wide eyes and tense postures said everything. They were scared. Ryan tried to keep his voice steady as he addressed the group. We need to stay calm. Whatever's going on, it's messing with our heads. Stick close and focus on getting out of here. Chris shook his head, his usual confidence shattered. Out of here? We don't even know which way is out anymore. Every door leads somewhere different. It's like the place keeps changing. Mia tightened her grip on her rifle, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. This isn't natural. Something's doing this. Something we can't fight. Jake let out a bitter laugh, though it sounded more like a groan. You think Alex planned all this? He's just one guy. How could he pull something like this off? Laura didn't respond. She sat crouched on the floor, her hands pressed over, her ears as if trying to block out the whispers that had grown louder. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. It's not Alex, she muttered under her breath. It's something else. What do you mean, something else? Ryan demanded, kneeling beside her. What are you hearing? She looked up at him, her eyes glassy and distant. Voices. So many voices. They're telling me things. Showing me things. I can't explain it. Before Ryan could press further, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. Everyone spun toward the sound, their weapons raised. A pile of crates near the far wall had toppled over, spilling their contents onto the ground. But there was no one there, no visible cause for the disturbance. Splitting up got us into this mess, Ryan said firmly. We stick together. Let's check it out. Reluctantly, the team moved toward the fallen crates, their steps slow and cautious. As they approached, Chris noticed something strange, a trail of footprints leading away from the debris. They were faint, almost indistinguishable from the dust-covered floor, but they were definitely there. Footsteps, Chris whispered, pointing them out. Someone, or something, is moving ahead of us. Ryan nodded. Follow them, quietly. They followed the trail deeper into the warehouse, their nerves stretched thin. The footsteps led them to another room, smaller than the main area but equally cluttered with junk. In the corner stood an old mirror, its surface cracked and foggy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the glass rippled like water. Mia gasped and stepped back, nearly tripping over a discarded pipe. What the hell was that? No one answered. They were too busy staring at the mirror, which now showed distorted reflections of themselves. Their images shifted unnaturally, twisting and contorting until they barely resembled human forms. Jake raised his weapon, aiming at the mirror. This is insane. What kind of trick is this? It's not a trick, Laura said softly, her voice trembling. It's showing us what's inside us, our fears, our doubts. As if on cue, the reflections began to change again. Instead of warped versions of themselves, the team saw flashes of their worst memories, moments they'd tried to bury deep within their minds. Ryan saw himself standing over a fallen comrade during his first mission, guilt etched across his Face. Chris relived the death of his younger brother, a tragedy he blamed himself for. Mia watched helplessly as her childhood home burned to the ground. Jake saw the faces of innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of one of his explosions, and Laura saw nothing but endless corridors, each one darker than the last, leading her farther away from the light. The visions ended abruptly, leaving the team shaken and disoriented. Ryan clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay focused. Enough of this. We're not dealing with Alex anymore. This is something bigger, something we can't understand, but we're getting out of here. Now. His words galvanized the others, snapping them back to reality. Together they turned away from the mirror and continued following the trail of footprints. The warehouse seemed to stretch endlessly, its layout shifting subtly with every step they took. Hallways twisted into impossible angles, and rooms appeared where none had been before. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being herded, guided by some unseen force toward an unknown destination. After what felt like hours, they reached a large open space filled with rusted machinery and broken equipment. At the center of the room stood Alex Carter, his arms crossed and a grim expression on his face. He looked exhausted, his clothes torn and stained with dirt, but there was also a sense of resolve in his eyes, as if he'd accepted whatever fate awaited him. "You shouldn't have come after me," Alex said quietly, his voice carrying an edge of sadness. "I warned you. I told you not to walk into this." Ryan stepped forward, his weapon trained on Alex. "Enough games. What is this place? What did you do to us?" Alex sighed, shaking his head. "I didn't do anything. This place, it's called the Veil. It's a pocket dimension created by something ancient, something beyond human comprehension. When I stole the data from Omicron Dynamics, I uncovered information about its existence. They've known about it for years, kept it hidden because they feared what it could do." "And what exactly does it do?" Chris asked, his tone sharp with skepticism. "It feeds on chaos," Alex replied. "On fear, on conflict. It thrives on the negative energy we create, the wars, the greed, the hatred. The more we fight, the stronger it becomes. That's why Omicron sent you here. They knew you'd trigger it, amplify its power. You're pawns in their game." "That's ridiculous," Jake snapped. "You expect us to believe some ghost story? There's no such thing as ancient forces or pocket dimensions." Alex smirked, bitterly. "Then how do you explain what's happening to you? Your gear failing, your minds unraveling, the world around you bending and breaking. This isn't science fiction. This is real. And unless you find a way to leave, you'll be trapped here forever." "Trapped?" Mia repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Forever?" Alex nodded. "Time doesn't exist here the way it does outside. Days feel like seconds, and seconds drag on like years. Eventually, you'll lose yourself completely. Become part of the Veil." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Each member of Shadowstrike wrestled with their own thoughts, struggling to process what they'd heard. Could it be true? Was this really some kind of supernatural prison designed to consume them? Ryan broke the silence, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside him. "If what you're saying is true, then tell us how to get out. Now." Alex hesitated, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "There's a way, but it's dangerous. You'll need to find the Nexus, a structure buried somewhere in the Veil. It's the only thing that can stabilize the dimension long enough for you to escape. But getting there won't be easy. The Veil will try to stop you, using everything it has." "We've faced worse," Ryan said, though his confidence wavered. "Where do we start?" Before Alex could answer, a low rumble shook the room. The ground quaked violently, sending debris tumbling from the ceiling. Shadows surged forward, coalescing into monstrous shapes that loomed over the group. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their mouths opened impossibly wide, emitting deafening screams. "Go!" Alex shouted, backing away. "Find the Nexus, I'll hold them off." "No!" Ryan yelled, turning toward him. "We're not leaving you behind." But Alex was already gone, swallowed by the darkness as the creatures advanced. Ryan cursed under his breath and turned back to his team. Move! Stay together and keep moving. They ran, fleeing the room as the creatures gave chase. The veil seemed to twist and warp around them, its corridors stretching impossibly long and narrow. Every step felt heavier, as if the very air resisted their movement. Behind them, the creatures' screams grew louder, closer. Despite their terror, one thought remained clear in Ryan's mind. They had to survive. No matter what it took, they had to find the nexus and a way out of this nightmare. The team sprinted through the endless maze of corridors, their boots pounding against the cold, cracked floor. The air was thick with tension, every breath feeling heavier than the last. Behind them, the monstrous shapes continued their relentless pursuit, their guttural screams echoing off the walls. Shadows danced unnaturally in the dim light, twisting and contorting as if alive. The veil wasn't just a place, it was hunting them. Ryan led the way, his rifle slung over his shoulder but useless against the creatures chasing them. Keep moving, he shouted over his shoulder, his voice strained. Don't look back. Chris followed closely behind, his tactical mind racing to make sense of the chaos. He tried to map their path in his head, but the layout of the veil kept shifting. Hallways looped back on themselves, doors led to dead ends, and familiar landmarks disappeared without warning. It was like running through a nightmare that refused to end. Mia brought up the rear, her sniper rifle at the ready despite knowing it wouldn't do much good. Her sharp eyes darted between the shadows, searching for any sign of an ambush. She couldn't shake the image of those glowing-eyed monsters. They were unlike anything she'd ever seen before. Not human, not animal, not even mechanical. They were something else entirely, born from the twisted fabric of this cursed dimension. Jake stumbled forward, nearly tripping over a loose piece of debris. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his temples. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. "We're never going to get out of here." "We will," Ryan snapped, glancing back briefly. "Stop thinking about dying and focus on surviving." Laura stayed silent, her hands clutching her headset tightly. The whispers had returned, louder now, filling her ears with overlapping voices that spoke in languages she couldn't understand. They weren't just random sounds, they carried meaning, fragments of thoughts and emotions that seeped into her mind. She clenched her teeth, trying to block them out, but they persisted, gnawing at her sanity. As they rounded another corner, the corridor opened into a large chamber filled with towering machinery. Rust-covered gears and pipes lined the walls, some still creaking faintly as if powered by an unseen force. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, a monolith covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, shifting and pulsating as if alive. "There," Laura exclaimed, pointing toward the monolith. "That must be the nexus Alex was talking about." Ryan nodded, his heart pounding. "Let's check it out. Maybe it can help us escape." They approached cautiously, their weapons raised. As they drew closer, the symbols on the monolith began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows across the room. The air around it crackled with energy, and a low hum filled the space. For a moment, everything felt calm, too calm. "This thing doesn't feel right," Chris said, eyeing the monolith warily. "It's like it's watching us." "It probably is," Mia replied, her finger hovering over the trigger of her rifle. "But we don't have a choice, we need answers." Before anyone could respond, Jake let out a startled yelp. A shadowy figure had emerged from behind the monolith, its form flickering like static on an old TV screen. It moved unnaturally, jerking and twitching as it advanced toward them. More figures appeared, surrounding the team and cutting off their escape routes. "Stay close," Ryan ordered, his voice tight with urgency. "Whatever happens, don't split up." The shadowy figures lunged forward, their movements erratic but fast. The team fired blindly, their bullets passing harmlessly through the entities. Each shot seemed to anger them further, causing their forms to grow denser and more solid. One of the creatures swiped at Mia, its claws grazing her arm. She cried out in pain, stumbling backward as blood trickled down her sleeve. "Mia!" Ryan shouted, rushing to her side. He pulled her behind him, shielding her from another attack. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though her face was pale with shock. "I'm fine. But we can't fight these things. They're not real, not in the way we understand." "Then what do we do?" Jake demanded, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't just stand here and wait for them to kill us." Laura stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the monolith. Maybe we activate it. If this is the Nexus, then it might stabilize the veil long enough for us to leave." "How?" Ryan asked sharply. "Do you see a button or a switch?" "I don't know," Laura admitted, "but it's our only chance." Without waiting for approval, she reached out and touched the surface of the monolith. The moment her hand made contact, a surge of energy coursed through her body. She gasped, her vision blurring as images flooded her mind. Visions of vast alien landscapes and towering beings made of shifting darkness. She saw glimpses of Alex standing before one of these entities, speaking urgently while holding a device similar to the tracker Omicron Dynamics had given them. The visions faded as quickly as they came, leaving Laura disoriented but clear-headed. "I think I understand now," she said softly, pulling her hand away from the monolith. "The veil isn't just a prison, it's alive. It's feeding on us, using our fear and confusion to grow stronger. To escape, we need to disrupt its—" "Hold! And how do we do that?" Chris asked, his tone skeptical. "We destroy the source," Laura replied. "The monolith, it's the anchor keeping the veil stable. If we take it down, the entire dimension collapses." Ryan frowned, considering her words. "If we destroy it, what happens to us? Do we die too?" "I don't know," Laura admitted, "but staying here isn't an option either. We'll go mad if we stay trapped in this place." Jake shook his head, his expression grim. "So we're risking everything on a maybe? That's your plan?" "It's the only plan we've got," Ryan said firmly. "Laura, tell us what to do." Laura hesitated, then nodded. "We'll need explosives. Jake, set charges around the base of the monolith. Make sure they're evenly spaced so the structure collapses completely. Everyone else, keep those things away from us until the charges are ready." Jake nodded and pulled several small devices from his satchel. "Got it. Just give me 2 minutes." As Jake worked, the rest of the team formed a defensive perimeter around him. The shadowy figures closed in, their movements faster and more aggressive. Bullets did little to stop them, but the noise and flashes of light seemed to slow their advance temporarily. Ryan fired repeatedly, his jaw clenched with determination. "Hurry up, Jake. We can't hold them off forever." "I'm almost done," Jake shouted back, placing the final charge. "Everyone fall back." The team retreated several meters, putting distance between themselves and the monolith. Jake activated the detonator, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. Then with a deafening roar, the charges exploded, sending shards of metal and stone flying in all directions. The monolith crumbled, its glowing symbols fading into darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. The team held their breath, waiting for the inevitable collapse of the veil. Instead, the room began to tremble violently, the ground cracking beneath their feet. The shadowy figures screamed in unison, their forms dissolving into wisps of smoke. "We did it!" Chris exclaimed, lowering his weapon. "The veil's breaking apart." But Laura shook her head, her expression grim. "Not yet. Look. Above. Them." The ceiling began to dissolve, revealing a swirling vortex of light and darkness. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic than ever. The veil wasn't collapsing, it was fighting back. Ryan turned to his team, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Stick together. Whatever happens next, we face it as one." As the vortex expanded, engulfing the room in its chaotic embrace, the team braced themselves for the unknown. They didn't know where, or when, they would end up. All they knew was that they had to trust each other to survive. And then with a final blinding flash of light, they were gone. When the light faded, the team found themselves standing in a place that was both familiar and alien. They were back in Sector 7, or at least it looked like Sector 7. The crumbling buildings and overgrown streets were the same. But something about the atmosphere felt off. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. It was as if the world around them had frozen in time. Ryan glanced around, his rifle raised cautiously. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his voice low. Chris nodded, though his expression was tense. "I think so, but where are we? Is this real?" Mia winced as she clutched her injured arm, blood still seeping through her fingers. "Feels real enough," she muttered grimly. "And it hurts." Jake looked pale, his hands trembling slightly, as he checked his satchel of explosives. "This doesn't make sense. We destroyed the monolith. Shouldn't the veil be gone?" Laura didn't answer. She stood motionless, staring at the sky. Her headset was silent now, the whispers finally gone, but her mind raced with questions. Had they truly escaped the veil, or were they still trapped within it? Everything around them seemed solid, tangible, yet there was an underlying wrongness that she couldn't ignore. "We need to keep moving," Ryan said firmly, breaking the uneasy silence. "If Alex was telling the truth, then the Nexus should have stabilized the veil long enough for us to leave. Maybe this is part of that process. Or maybe it's another trick," Chris countered, his tone sharp with frustration. "How? Do we know this isn't just another layer of the veil messing with us?" Ryan hesitated, knowing Chris had a point, but they couldn't afford to second-guess every step. "We don't," he admitted. "But standing here won't help us figure it out. Let's head toward the edge of Sector 7. If we can find a way out, we'll know we're free." The group moved cautiously, their weapons ready despite the apparent calm. As they walked, the environment began to shift subtly. Buildings they passed moments ago reappeared ahead of them, their positions slightly altered. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, even though the sun hung high in the sky. And then there were the whispers. Faint at first, but growing louder. With each step, Laura stopped suddenly, her eyes wide with alarm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Everyone froze, straining to listen. At first, there was only silence. Then slowly the whispers returned, soft, overlapping voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "This again?" Jake groaned, rubbing his temples. "I thought we were done with this crap." "It's not the same," Laura said quietly, her voice trembling. "These aren't random sounds, they're memories. Our memories." Ryan frowned, glancing at her. "What do you mean?" Before she could explain, the whispers grew louder, coalescing into distinct voices. Each member of the team heard their own name called softly, followed by fragments of their past, regrets, fears, failures. Ryan heard the cries of comrades he'd failed to save. Chris relived the guilt of his brother's death. Mia saw flashes of her family abandoning her. Jake remembered the faces of innocents caught in his explosions. And Laura heard endless echoes of corridors stretching farther than she could run. The weight of these voices pressed down on them, threatening to crush their resolve. Jake dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "Make it stop," he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "I can't take it anymore." "Stay focused," Ryan barked, though his own hands shook as he fought to block out the sounds. "It's trying to break us, don't let it win." Chris gritted his teeth, forcing himself to move forward despite the chaos in his mind. "He's right. We can't give in. Keep going." Mia stumbled after him, tears streaming down her face as she tried to ignore the images flashing before her eyes. Laura stayed close to Ryan, her breathing shallow but steady. She reached out and grabbed his arm, grounding herself in his presence. "We have to fight it," she murmured. "If we lose control, it wins." As they pushed forward, the whispers intensified, becoming deafening. The ground beneath their feet cracked and shifted, revealing glimpses of the veil's chaotic energy swirling below. Shadows darted across their path, taking on vaguely human forms before dissolving into nothingness. Every step felt heavier, as if the veil itself was resisting their escape. Finally, they reached the edge of Sector 7, or what they hoped was the edge. A massive gate loomed ahead, its rusted metal bars twisted and broken. Beyond it lay open fields bathed in golden sunlight, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness behind them. Freedom seemed so close, yet none of them dared to believe it. "That's it," Ryan said, pointing toward the gate, just a little farther. But as they approached, the whispers erupted into a cacophony of screams. The shadows converged, forming a wall of writhing darkness that blocked their path. In the center of the mass stood a towering figure, a humanoid, shape made entirely of shifting black smoke. Its glowing red eyes locked onto the team, radiating pure malice. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure growled, its voice deep and guttural. "You've seen too much." Ryan stepped forward, raising his weapon defiantly. "Get out of our way, we're leaving." The creature laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Leave? You think it's that simple? You've disrupted. To balance, the Veil demands payment." "Payment?" Chris spat. "For what? Surviving your damn game?" "For existing," the creature replied coldly. "Your fear, your pain, it fuels us. Without it, we fade. But you've resisted. That cannot go unpunished." As it spoke, the shadows surged forward, engulfing the team in darkness. Panic set in as they struggled to fend off the encroaching void. Ryan fired blindly, his bullets passing harmlessly through the smoke. Chris swung his knife wildly, trying to carve a path through the chaos. Mia screamed as the shadows clawed at her wounds, reopening them and causing fresh waves of agony. Laura collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed by the assault. But as the darkness closed in, she felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. Her mind flashed back to the visions she'd seen when she touched the monolith, the alien landscapes, the towering beings, and Alex standing before one of them. She realized then that the Veil wasn't just a prison. It was alive, sentient, and ancient beyond comprehension. And it thrived on conflict. Summoning every ounce of strength, Laura shouted, "Stop fighting it!" Her words cut through the chaos like a blade. The others turned to her, confusion etched across their faces. "What are you talking about?" Ryan demanded. "It's killing us." "No," Laura said, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her heart. "It's feeding on us, on our fear, our anger, our resistance. If we stop fighting, it has nothing left to take." The creature paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. "Clever girl," it hissed. "But will your friends follow your lead?" Laura locked eyes with Ryan, pleading silently for him to trust her. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered his weapon. One by one, the others followed suit, dropping their arms and forcing themselves to stand still despite the overwhelming urge to flee or fight. The shadows hesitated, their movements slowing as the team's resistance waned. The creature tilted, its head studying them curiously. "Interesting," it rumbled. "Most humans cling to their emotions until the end. You let go." With that, the darkness began to recede, retreating back into the depths of the Veil. The whispers faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The creature lingered for a moment longer, its red eyes flickering dimly before vanishing entirely. For a long, while no one spoke, they simply stood there, catching their breath and processing what had just happened. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. Did we beat it?" "I don't think we beat anything," Laura replied softly. "We just stopped giving it power. For now." Chris wiped sweat from his brow, his hands still trembling. "So what now? Do we walk through that gate and pretend none of this ever happened?" Ryan shook his head. "We can't. Omicron Dynamics sent us here. They know something about the Veil, and they're using it. If we don't expose them, they'll send someone else, and maybe next time they won't survive." Mia winced as she adjusted her grip on her rifle. "You're talking about going after one of the most powerful corporations on Earth. How do you plan to pull that off?" "One step at a time," Ryan said firmly. "First we get out of here, then we figure out the rest." With that, they stepped through the gate, leaving Sector 7 and the Veil behind. But as they emerged into the sunlight, none of them could shake the feeling that they hadn't truly escaped. The Veil's influence lingered, buried deep within their minds. waiting for the right moment to resurface. And somewhere far away, Alex Carter watched silently, knowing the fight was far from over.